along with Vegeta and Nappa not killing that building they ran through when they landed on Earth, and Goku not being allowed to have a halo. These are some of the... It's fine.
Remember when Raditz first came to Earth, he took out that random farmer? Oh, you don't? That's because in the old version of the dub, he didn't actually kill him.
I didn't see the first episode of Dragon Ball Z for the longest time,
severely knocked him on his butt. In order to sell this idea, the farmer showed signs of life, specifically stating how much the attack hurt. This was because, of course, death was a taboo subject, and opening the first episode of the series with the death of an innocent farmer would be a pretty bad idea. Come to think of it, that's a shocking way to open a series in any country. This edit was one of the many instances of characters
They took Homie's arm off. I remember that moment so much more vividly than anybody dying, and I knew they were dead. And I remember seeing his arm being taken off. You know what I mean?
Showing signs of life to ensure that they just got hurt real bad instead. That makes a whole bunch of sense. Getting hit by a superhuman monster. He totally survives. Sure. The Saiyan saga was pretty dang violent and deadly, but it didn't compare to the Namek and Frieza sagas, which, due to their high body count, had to be seriously censored in order to air in America. A number of the deaths that occurred on Namek during the Frieza saga had to be heavily edited when Dragon Ball Z was broadcast in the States. In order to make the show less violent and to get rid of all that blood, those deaths on Namek were toned down. Specifically, holes in bodies were removed, heads were no longer decapitated, and what were previously fatal injuries became less graphic blows. This can be seen in the deaths of various members of Frieza's army, like Goldo and Zarbon. It's an edit that makes sense given context, but seeing characters get punched in the back real hard instead of pierced through their body is definitely pretty hilarious to look at these days.
They did kill a lot of people,
could get Dragon Ball Z in trouble when airing in America, so the word had to be avoided at all costs. Luckily, these kinds of censors were easy enough to do, since dubbing meant changing the dialogue anyway. As such, killing and death were removed from the series' vocabulary. The Another Dimension shtick is the most obvious example of this, but there's another just as silly example of working around killing. The example in question came when Gohan gained his ultimate power and was sent to fight Super Buu. Before the fight began, Gohan faced Buu and stated that he would destroy him. It's not that crazy of a thing for Gohan to say, but it's made hilarious considering that this was used instead of kill. The dub changing it to avoid being too violent. But here's the thing, in what world does destroy sound less threatening or violent than kill?
I have no idea.
Dragon Ball Z isn't the bloodiest series in the world, since the violence is more fantasy-like in nature, and with so many alien characters, there's not always a need to show blood. However, the series does have its fair share of bloody moments, a number of which had to be edited in order to appear more kid-friendly in the States. Some of these moments include Piccolo's blood being recolored to green, despite him bleeding red in Dragon Ball and then purple later on in Dragon Ball Z, in order to lower the violence of the series. Other examples include pretty much any instance of a Super Saiyan appearing beat up and bloody from their fight, like when Goku first went Super Saiyan. Some of the blood was removed from his body. This also happened when Gohan first went Super Saiyan 2, since some of the blood on his face was edited out, and later when Vegeta sacrificed himself in the Buu saga.
Ooh, one of the greatest moments ever. One of my friends was talking to me about that in middle school, how he was angry that they removed so much blood from Dragon Ball Z. So it's not a new concept for sure, at least for people whose families, you know, were a lot more well-versed than mine. And so I had brought something like that up to my mom, and it was during the Garlic movie, I think, where Goku fought Garlic, and he used the spirit bomb, right? And he was taking life from the planet into the big blue ball to, like, blow people up, right? And my mom is, like, anything that has any blasphemous kind of over or undertones, she is not for at all. Like, all these changes are things my mother would support. She's in the rah-rah, do it for the kids, you know what I mean? Like, and so when she heard it was called the Spirit Bomb, that was enough to get her from stopping me from watching the show. I didn't finish that movie for like another year after that. So,
next up, we have another very understandable change made to the series when airing in America: Mr. Popo's skin tone. Specifically, this change was made in the CW airing of Kai in an attempt to remove offensive imagery. For context, Mr. Popo's design is derivative of racist caricatures and cartoons, the large red lips and dark skin appearing similar to that of old offensive imagery. Because of this, CW's Toonzai version of Dragon Ball Z Kai made edits to change the color of Mr. Popo's skin from black to a light blue as a means of lessening the similarities to racist caricatures.
Yeah, which is fucking weird, okay? Let me see, I'd never even seen blue Mr. Popo. Mr. Popo blue. Wow, they really did that shit, bro. They really made him fucking blue. So, you know, it's funny, in the 3D version, it doesn't actually look that bad. So I figured it out. You know, it's just different when the character is clearly not shucking and jiving across the screen and is not just playing like a servant role, but he's like respected and like he hangs out with God. I mean, like literally is chilling up with God in Dragon Ball Z. That, you know, it just takes the fact that he's dark-skinned as something that nobody really notices. You know, like when you watch the show, it's not something that you feel offended by. You don't feel like it's like an offensive representation of that character. You know, he gets a lot of screen time. You know, he's well respected by the main character, and he hangs out with God. You know what I mean? So it just is, they walk a fine line there, and I think they do it right. I think if they made him talk really funny, you know, like, you know, he sounds different, right? But it's not like a just straight up comical, like he's a fucking doofus. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not an idiotic character that does such dumb things that nobody understands. And he's not like raping people. He's not violent and nonsensical. Those are the things that those other black characters did that they were just so goofy you couldn't like. Mr. Popo's representation that you can't actually like. Right? So him being dark-skinned and having big lips doesn't make it offensive just because he has those aspects of his character. So something that they just kind of represent, you know, correctly. So, anywho's, and let's move on. What?
It's an edit that makes a lot of sense, since many have spoken up about Mr. Popo's appearance being offensive over the years.
I don't know. I just don't know why I just don't agree with that.
Stick, but we can't blame the CW for making these kinds of edits. We've mentioned already how many hoops Saban, Funimation, and other dubs went through in order to avoid referencing religion and Satan in the English broadcasts of the series.
Mr. Satan Man. I didn't know that was his name at all. I always knew him as Hercule.
Aside from the Home for Infinite Losers edit, there was one other major change that had to be made in order to avoid religious references. Of course, we're talking about Mr. Satan.
Mr.
While the character
Satan,
was known by his devilish stage name in Japan, this had to be changed in America. Instead of being known as Mr. Satan, the character was referred to as Hercule in earlier versions of Dragon Ball Z dubs. It's not a bad name, to be fair, since it still fits the theatrical pro wrestler vibe that Mr. Satan has.
Really not.
Just with less demonic implications. Heck, we'd be fine if Hercule was the character's real name, but unfortunately, Mr. Satan's true name was revealed to be Mark. Seriously? Mark? It's Mark? Come on!
Oh, hi, Mark.
Showing guns in American cartoons is a big taboo, so it makes sense that the scenes in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z had to be edited and censored in order for the series to air.
The Red Ribbon Army had all kinds of guns.
This is pretty standard practice with anime and can be seen in other shows that were aired on kids' channels. In the CW's version of Dragon Ball Z Kai, the first episode had to be edited in order to tone down the guns. Specifically, the farmer that Raditz encountered had his gun turned into a laser gun. Sound and visual effects being added to convince viewers that it wasn't a real rifle.
What?
Turn back the clock to the original Dragon Ball, and there are a number of edits made to censor guns in that series. The most notable one being the removal of the sequence in which Bulma straight up shoots Goku. Yeah, that just really wouldn't fly in the US.
I've never seen that clip. That's funny.
As we've covered time and time again, Master Roshi is filthy, dirty, and a creepy old man who needs to learn a thing or two about how to treat women. Because of his old perverted ways, it's not surprising in the least that he has a massive collection of dirty magazines in his possession. In fact, his perverted nature and love of these magazines is so well known that Krillin knew to bring some reading material as a means of enticing the old hermit into training him.
I remember that.
Of course, these dirty magazines were one of the many things about Roshi's character that had to be censored in various American broadcasts of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. In some cases, the magazines were just edited to be blank, and in others, they were changed to normal magazines.
That's funny.
The original Dragon Ball was way dirtier than Dragon Ball Z. The reason being that it was much more comedy-driven, leading to a lot more adult humor that had to be edited when the series was brought over to America. One interesting example of this came in the scene when Oolong attempted to get away from Bulma and Goku, transforming into a fish to swim away. Bulma, however, knew just how to get Oolong back, breaking out a fishing lure with some panties on the hook that'd surely lure that perverted little piggy out of the water.
Funny.
This, of course, would not fly in America, so instead Bulma fished for Oolong using a fat stack of cash. The edit wasn't all that bad, and honestly, those bills seem like a better lure than some old underwear. Even if Oolong is a pervert who wasted the series' first Dragon Ball wish on Penteus.
He really did. Never forget.
One of the absolute biggest never-do taboos in kids' television is putting children in danger on screen. While this taboo has loosened up a bit in recent times, it's caused a lot of trouble for cartoons like Batman the Animated Series. And, of course, Dragon Ball Z's broadcast in America. As you can imagine, this led to certain edits when it came to young Gohan in the early episodes of the series. One of the most notable examples of this came in the form of Gohan's tears, or lack thereof. Of course, we're talking about the fact that when Raditz had a hold of a helpless Gohan, his tears were edited out in order to make him appear less distressed, and show that he wasn't in as much danger as the original version portrayed him to be.
You mean when he was gonna get killed by Goku's brother-in-law or some shit? Because he definitely would have. That's where we're gonna end it, guys. I had a really fun time with this video. Dude, Bulma smokes. I know. I didn't fucking know Bulma smoked. That's the part. That's crazy. I had no idea. There's actually a lot of shit in there I had no idea, bro. No idea. But it's weird also how much the trying to take out all the killing from the show straight up failed. I knew all these people died and had to be resurrected. So that's so fucking funny, man. Anyways, I'll holler at you guys, bro. Peace.